Sustainable investing has been framed in context of the challenge, particularly in context of the trade-off between making economic investments and making social investments. With the implication that in making an economic investment, we give up some social value, and in making a social investment, we give up some economic value. This couldn't be further from the truth. Now, there are some tough decisions we have to make, but as undergraduate and graduate students, we want to apply our creativity, our innovative capacity to pursuing opportunities that are ideal investments, investments that return both social and economic value.
My name is Dustin. Today I'm joined by Amit, Nicola, and Mani. We're extremely excited to present to you our proposal for a sustainability-focused student-run investment fund here at NTU. Now, given NTU's deep background in sustainability, we think that there's not a better place in the world for us to do this with. So let's take a step back and ask the question, why do people start student-run investment funds? Well, broadly, there's two reasons. Firstly, we see that people value hands-on learning, especially one-year master's students, and this is something that's really going to be a draw for them. And secondly, we can see that creating this type of club is really going to facilitate an environment that builds relationships and builds student networks throughout the school. But why do we specifically want to start an investment club? We want to create a novel impact in the world of sustainable investing by shaping the future business leaders of tomorrow, giving them the tools and the perspectives that they're going to need to make sustainable decisions in the future. How are we going to do this? This is a brief outline of the agenda that we're going to cover today. Now that you know our core goals, we're going to jump right into how the strategy that we've designed to accomplish these goals is going to do that. We'll pass it off to you.
So how do the student investment clubs work? Let's say we're approached by a socially responsible business. This business is looking for an investment. What are the considerations that we've got to think through? And does the business have a good track record? Is the board credible? Is the company management capable? But we're students. What kind of experience do we really have in making these important decisions? There are experienced investment professionals backed by lawyers, accountants, sometimes governments. There are private equity firms that will sit down with these businesses, understand their needs, and structure a solution with years of experience doing this. Now, we can start just another investment fund for the purpose of being a student investment fund to do this very same thing. But we want to go beyond that. Consider this. Let's suppose that we invest in funds. So we are a fund of funds. Why is this particularly compelling? What are our strengths as students? What are our strengths in an academic setting? It is academic theories, access to cutting-edge research, professors, various other resources. And these tie in thoroughly with investment and portfolio management. The ability to assess how well an investment manager is doing. The ability to tell how this investment is doing or how this portfolio manager is doing in context of its peers. Are they generating alpha? These are academic and theoretical questions that people with rigorous mathematical backgrounds, like us, financial engineering graduate students with academic resources, are particularly well suited to answer. So what does this actually look like? So here's a quick recap on the reasons why we're going with the fund-of-fund approach. First of all, the qualitative aspects of making actual investment in individual business favor established and experienced firms. We want to go for something a little more quant-heavy. We want lower transaction costs, which should be liquid instruments, so risks are minimized. But let's look into some of the investment criteria. Standard, sustainable investment criteria. We have environmental, social, and governance, various criteria. This is compiled by an Oxford University research report. They looked at what MSCI, which is an indexing firm, does. So what criteria they use in deciding which companies should be sustainable, classified as sustainable, and available in their sustainable investment index. Let's take this a step further. And let's explore one specific strategy. Let's suppose that we are focusing on funds of funds, but we are going long on the accidents and pollution strategy. As in, we think that is a sustainable investing strategy that can outperform in the long run. Here's a quick case study. So, British Petroleum, a large oil company. How has this company been doing relative to its peers? Over the past 10 years, they're actually the most poorly performing oil major. Why is that? A lot of it drives down to this 2010 oil spill that wiped out a large amount of their shareholder value. Classic case of a serious environmental accident. But what's particularly interesting is that 5 years before this, MSCI, in creating that sustainable index, identified that BP's risk management practices for preventing spills was not particularly great. And they did that when there was another smaller accident back in Texas. And so they removed BP from their environmentally sustainable fund. And what was the result of that? Here's the performance of BP stock. The orange is the performance of the MSCI World Index, that's the base for comparison. And then we have the performance of the ESG index. So by making environmentally conscious, socially conscious decisions, we were actually able to outperform. Let's now explore and put this in context.
Let's step back. Let's take a look at what we've talked about so far. So we first introduced the hypothesis that you don't have to trade social value for economic value, that the two are not mutually exclusive. From there, we changed the direction of our analysis, looking inwards, asking what are our strengths as master's students, and what can we do new that's not already in the student investment fund space. From there, we've come to the financial innovation of our fund of funds model, investing in superior sustainability investment strategies instead of individual companies, because our strengths are more suited to do this. The key takeaway from there is that, motivated by these key findings, what this strategy is going to do is it's going to foster an environment of innovation within our club. Because to do this kind of research, if you think about it, all of our students are going to have to stay on the forefront of sustainability investment research. They're going to have to know exactly what the trends are in the industry, because they're making these decisions based on these trends. And as a result, it's going to foster this environment within the club of innovation in the sustainability space. And this ties exactly into our core goal, our big idea of pushing forward this idea of molding the future business leaders of tomorrow. This is going to happen in 3 steps. First, we're going to introduce emerging financial professionals to opportunities in sustainable investing. From here, the ones who are interested are going to join our club, and they're going to familiarize themselves with innovative trends in sustainable investing, like I've talked about. And finally, the big idea, equipping future business leaders with the tools and perspectives that they're going to need to become sustainable leaders. Now, at the end of the day, we're just 4 master's students. So we're not going to sit here and pretend that we can set the standard or set a best criteria, best practices for sustainable investing, because we can't do that. But what we can do instead is we can raise and nurture the next generation of sustainable business leaders through giving them the experience and in the club with us today. So now I'm going to pass it off to Nicola, who's going to talk about our implementation plan and answer how we can actually get this.
So we decided on a strategy, how we're going to lead this club. But now we need a business model, which ours is comprised of 5 parts. And these 5 parts were based off of best practices from world-leading student investment funds. And now we have a very specific 1-year master's program, so we took the best of these practices and tailored them to meet our specific needs. So first, let's start with funding. 2 questions. How much money do we need, and where is it going to come from? We need $200,000. We base this off of comparables of other student investment funds. And how we're going to grow this fund is that we'll have our investment strategies, for example, in the accident and pollution that I didn't talk about before, take those theories invest a portfolio, build it over time, prove that strategy, and then add additional strategies as we go. This money will come from the endowment fund with a sustainability focus. Why would NTU give us this money? One, student learning. Also because we directly fit with their vision of pioneering sustainability innovation and developing sustainable goods. We believe this is feasible because they've shown they give quite a substantial amount of money to sustainable research, and the amount that we need is a very small percentage of their yearly endowment investment fund just for each year. So next, we're going to talk about who we're going to hire and how we structure.
The key to having a successful club is in hiring the right people. Our organizational structure has an advisory board at the top who will mentor our students and provide them with strategic and industry experience. We will also have portfolio managers who will be made up of master students. In their 1 year with us in their program, their role will be to invest and also to share their learnings with the rest of the members. What we found to be best in class on Cornell MBA Fund is to have the role of analysts. These analysts, although the primary role is to learn, will provide the continuity that our club needs when the master students graduate. In terms of hiring, what we've found to be best in class in many different investment funds from around the world is to have students who have a very strong analytical rigor as well as a clear passion for investing. However, what's very unique to our club is that we need students who have a passion for our vision, who care about sustainable investments as much as we do. In terms of the investment process, we saw a very detailed one in the example that Matt gave. Our process will look like this. These portfolio managers will research into theses and present the theses to the club. They will then delve into research with the analysts before the club decides whether or not to invest. Let's have a look at how we're going to evaluate the success of our club.
So we know we have a key vision to shape future business leaders by equipping them with an innovative perspective on sustainable business. But how do we measure how we're achieving this goal? Back to Dustin's three-tier pyramid of our immediate, near-term, and long-term goals, we have different metrics and who's going to be accountable for achieving those metrics. Starting at the bottom, on a year-to-year basis, the portfolio managers need to meet or exceed the metric, and they'll be accountable for that. Over time, we'll have our advisory board, made up of the alumni of this club to keep in touch, as well as specific professors. And they'll look for the year-over-year patterns of performance to see that we're really improving these investment strategies. And finally, our long-term goal is to have research recognition and really inspire alumni to bring these investment practices into their real life. So finally, the last step in our business model is how we're going to transition. With our 1 year's master's program, how do we be a sustainable fund?
So due to the nature of this 1 year program, we are going to lose portfolio managers every year to graduation. And with them, we're going to lose their thesis ideas as well as investments. So what we need is a model that will sustain and remain and have continuity in our club. And we have that model right here, headed by our advisory board as well as the role analysts. So let me illustrate this through an example. At the end of year 1, all of our portfolio managers, as well as some of the analysts, will graduate. However, we have the advisory board still here to provide continual encouragement and mentorship to our club. What we also have is a role of analysts. Some of these analysts will get promoted onto the position of portfolio managers. Thus, instead of having to hire every single person from the club again, we only have to do some new hiring. This ensures there is continuity. Something else we found to be best in class is from the University of Delaware's Bluehead Investment Club. What they promote is comprehensive reports created by each portfolio manager. These reports will detail investments and be passed on to new incoming members as well. So that wraps up our business model.
So to conclude the presentation, we came to you when we presented you 3 key ideas. The idea that there's no trade-off between economic and social value, the idea of inspiring future business leaders, and finally, the business plan that we're actually going to take to make these ideas come to life. Now, at the end of the day, we walked in with a vision, and that vision was to shape the future business leaders of tomorrow so that they can make sustainable choices. And we believe that if you help us bring this club to fruition, that it's going to do exactly that. Thank you so much for listening. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Simon. We will now proceed on to the Q&A segment.
advisory board? What do you think will be the board? Do you acknowledge the fact that you have a moving bunch of analysts, and you also acknowledge the fact that there is insufficient experience? Right? So, but you seem to have done a touch and go in terms of mentoring, and what is the role of mentoring? Can you expand on that? What are your views?
Definitely. So first and foremost, people that are going to make up this advisory board will be the four of us. As we're starting this club, and next year, as we finish this program, we will move on to the role of advisory board. What's so great about this role is that you are not only mentoring students, but you're also seeing your thesis and ideas come to fruition. Because this is a one-year program, and you're only a portfolio manager for 1 year, the ability of seeing really how your ideas lay out is what's really going to drive this advisory board program.
So you're not visualizing mentors as being from outside, but you're visualizing the previous seniors as being mentors. I mean, do you think that is good enough?
Yeah, we definitely want to put some, have some professor collaborations and faculty on this advisory board. The reason we highlight this idea of putting former students on the advisory board is that the very first run of this, so as we launch it, it's going to be particularly challenging. And this year we plan to have mostly working closely with advisors and faculty and making sure that we're able to get this off the ground. There's no better training or there's no better means of continuity than having the graduating class teach the incoming class of portfolio managers. This is why we make these decisions. This is why the portfolio is where it is today. And that's why we envision the primary role, or the most significant role of the advisory board to be weighted on the alumni. Professors are definitely going to be a large part of this, especially facilitating the whole process. So we think this idea of we make the decisions this year to provide continuity next year and to keep that connection with alumni. It's a very good idea to emphasize alumni.
You mentioned that this is a fund of funds, very expensive. Fees are paid to funds. Have you considered perhaps a portion of your portfolio into direct investments, as in the case that we've presented to you?
So when we say funds to funds, there's definitely, we're not exactly getting a fund to do all the work for us. The reason being, it might seem like we're buying into the entire portfolio. But what we can actually do is structure our purchases in a way that we're betting on very specific things. So here's, for example, a heat map of what the weightings might be for one particular fund, let's say the MSCI. And here might be a heat map of the weightings for another fund. So there are multiple ETFs out there with different methodologies for weighting. So to simplify this problem, we want to bet on one particular kind of investing strategy. We don't have a fund that's 100% invested in that strategy or 100% invested in that security. So how do we actually get the desired outcome of 100% investment in that specific strategy? What we do is we actually have multiple positions. So we go short on fund A, we go long on fund B, and as a result, we're actually able to, some illustration here, short position, long position, we eliminate, so short position offsets some of the long position, and we're able to ultimately have positive, +4 position. It's a simple illustration, but working this in a much more complex portfolio with many different securities and finding the right combinations of securities to invest, to isolate and pick an investment strategy is really the essence of this. So there are definitely fees involved in funds of funds. The funds we've talked about so far, MSCIs and ETF, nothing is lower in the world of fees than an ETF. But ultimately, our objective is to structure, they're going to be a little more sophisticated, but we want to structure investments in a way that we're not just saying, oh, this fund is good, it's doing well. We're saying, take this fund, take the underlying investment strategy, isolate that investment strategy, and then we make a bet on it. So in reality, we are ultimately getting down to some individual securities, or sets of securities, but we're getting the funds to do the work of actively trading. It's very expensive for us to set up a fund and do the day-to-day trading it takes to maintain the weightings and indexes, and to track the sustainable indexes. So we're getting the funds to do a lot of that work for us in terms of the transactional work, but the actual investment strategy work is mostly done by us in the way we structure our investments.
Thank you. I'd like to congratulate you on your start. I like the way you built a lot of anticipation before the start of the session and the presentation, so great job.
Seriously though, when I look at this, a couple of things concern me. When I think about this, number one question comes to me is, what is different about your approach than a traditional investment club, which I would see in any university or among non-professional investors? That'd be something I'm mulling in my head. I don't see the SRI, the social aspect of it shining through. I see investment thesis, I see structure, I see the organization, but help me understand that. When I look at some of the best practices clubs that you called out, it is a question of how was their performance, because that's what you based a lot of your size of portfolio on and some of the structural questions. Did they drive some of that SRI goal that we're seeking?
Sure. One of the big challenges with any active investment management is that most active investors actually trail the index. We base most of our study on what are the funds, how are the funds performing relative to the others. So the very best funds have relatively good performance. It doesn't mean that in absolute terms they're necessarily beating the underlying indexes. So the real challenge here is in trying to do everything, trying to do what everyone else is doing in terms of conventional investment strategies. You take some organizational lessons from there, but we're trying to say investment strategy, let's keep out of that. Now, getting specifically into how funds of funds is different than a direct fund, sort of direct investment strategy. The main difference is that it teaches students to think beyond individual investments. We've been taught in accounting class to say, how do we value a company, look at the cash flows, look at discounted and various models associated with them. But as a student, we're a financial engineering program. Most people are going to go to finance. The question is, did I know that there was this opportunity to explore sustainable investing? Most of us might end up at hedge funds or other places. But this idea that there might be many lucrative opportunities in the world of sustainable investing, had this club existed, teaches that. Now, why does funds of funds specifically contribute to that insight on sustainable investment opportunities? If you're evaluating individual companies, you're doing what every other hedge fund and every other portfolio manager is doing. But when you're evaluating portfolio management techniques, you're thinking, is this strategy of active investment, is, for example, weighting pollution, or is going after certain metrics really a good strategy? Is, for example, hedge funds are categorized long short funds, they're distressed debt funds. You're teaching yourself as students and learning about the various investment strategies so you can better identify which industry truly interests you within the sustainable space and understand what, and go beyond what you're being taught in class, standard valuation models. Go one step above and say, how do these valuation models influence how these funds are actually performing? And what kind of investment strategy should I invest myself in, learn more about, and pursue? The final part of that, in terms of how this is entirely different, there are very few things we can do in this world that no one else is doing, but this is definitely one of those things that very few other funds do. We don't know of any student investment clubs that do funds and strategies. Most of them do standard pick a company, analyze it, invest it. This is one of those strategies that's particularly differentiated, and it relies on our strengths. The master's program, financial engineering program, portfolio management is a particularly mathematical field, and this really aligns very well with our strengths.
I love the direction and the mission that you stated numerous times as far as shaping the leaders of tomorrow, and I think we're all in favor of that. You also made a very strong statement at the beginning saying there are no trade-offs, right? You said there's a financial and an SRI ROI can be generated. I still need to be convinced on it. I'm not seeing it. I am hearing you talk about quant and analysis, which will move us towards deep student knowledge, tutelage, board of directors. I'm all for that. I don't see the SRI component. I'm sorry if I'm missing it. If you're saying it's in the fund of funds and investing in MSCI ESG is the way to go, then that could be the end of your statement, and we can agree on that's your point of view. I'm just not seeing anything further than that. And that's okay, but just tell me if I'm seeing it right or wrong.
Sure. I'll make a quick comment on that. The question is how exactly we contribute to the world of socially responsible investment. There are very few ways that we can influence that world without being a famous academic or a major investment manager there. So our means of influencing the world of socially responsible investing is by providing or funneling students, master's students, into that field, introducing this field to them, and actually providing that field to the top, which is otherwise very difficult to find. Most people are very keen to graduate and work at a hedge fund. They've not really thought through some of these opportunities. And this frame of mind that we take in terms of portfolio management, thinking about what investors are for the market is the key there in terms of how specifically we contribute to the world of socially responsible investing. To address that part about trade-off between economic and social value. There are always decisions where there will be those trade-offs. What we want to think about is engineering the situation differently to say it doesn't necessarily have to be trade-offs. So for example, if I'm selling, maybe I'm a t-shirt manufacturer and there are social issues in where I'm manufacturing, some other place in the world. The smart, creative solution to this that we want to invent and apply into a particular firm would be, rather than just reduce our price or keep our prices constant and pay workers more, what we can do is educate our end consumers about it. And just the same way, Whole Foods is a very successful organic branded food company. They've been able to teach customers to tell the difference between competitors. So now you're not at a competitive disadvantage for paying your workers more and having to raise your prices to do that. Consumers are able to make those distinctions through branding. So that's just a quick example of how innovative business practices, from branding and telling the customer about the social impact of what we're doing, follows through that supply chain and allows us to deliver both social impact and economic value. Whole Foods is one of the most successful supermarket chains out there, particularly growing very fast. And they've capitalized on this idea that consumers will pay more if you tell them what exactly you're doing, how you're treating the